Hello everyone, welcome to the 10th part of the video tutorial series Learning Pandas from Zero. My name is Xingqi Leung, and in this tutorial I will be your guide in Pandas. Today we will start talking about another application of Pandas. We will focus on building a pivot table. We will talk about what a pivot table is and how we can use them to present complex data. Let's recapitulate what we have learned in our last tutorial. We have covered how to use the method group by and the method aggregation, or the abbreviation AGG. The group by method is a very powerful way of grouping data of multiple kinds. Pandas returns us an iterable which contains subset of the original data frame, classified by the unique features along one or multiple columns. Then we have talked about the aggregation. It helps us to quickly get the quality features of data in one or multiple data frame. Now we will do something more. In the chapter, we will introduce another interesting applications. First, we will learn about pivot table. We will talk about what it is, and then we will talk about how to build a pivot table from a data frame, and what we can learn about in a pivot table. So let's dive in. A pivot table is a sort of derived table. It means that we try to rearrange the one-dimensional data frame into a two-dimensional table. Usually, we need to define a specific column in the data frame to be the row index of the destination table, and similarly for the column of the destination table. Finally, we need the third column of the data frame, which will be the data contained in the table. The final table will let you view the variation along row or column easily, and hence helping you to see the trend. To make the application more interesting, this time we will present a mini case study. Let's assume your dear friend this time works in a new fruit shop. If you recall chapter 10, your friend was still working in a survey bureau. Now it is changed again. This time your friend collects the fruit sales data, which is shown on the right hand side. It contains the date and the amount of fruit, namely apples, orange and kiwi, sold in each day. Your friend knows that you're learning the pivot table. So your friend wants to know how to use them to make these data easier to visualize. This time, besides the command for building a table, we will also need to process the data beforehand. So let's see how we can do that. First, we need to transform the date. When we obtain the data frame, it is a good practice to check the data type of each column. If you recall our chapter 5 material, we need to use the attribute dtypes to get the information. We find that the column date belongs to object. Notice that it means Pandas treat this column as a bunch of string data. This means Pandas does not recognize this data is actually related to date and has meaning in each of the string. So we need to convert the column into datetime object first. To do so, we need to use the native Python method pandas.datetime. It takes two arguments: a pandas series which contains the time in string format and the format you want pandas to convert the string into datetime object. Again, the format code is identical to that when you use the datetime library. %y is for year, %m is for month, %d is for day. Then Pandas generates a new series, and I store the series in the original column date to overwrite the data. After that, when we check the data types again, and you see, now the date has the type datetime 64. Once the data is in the datetime format, we can then extract the week and weekdays from these days. Why do we want to do so? Because right now there is no common features in any column. However, when we consider a bunch of dates, they can share the same week or same weekdays. And we can use these features as our criteria to build a pivot table. To extract this information, we need to rely on the method apply. If you are not familiar with this technique, I encourage you to visit chapter 6 and 7 to review this technique. And we built two short methods, which is taken from the datetime module. The first one is the getWeek method. It uses the method isocalendar, which is the standard method of a datetime object. This method gives you the number of week that datetime object is in. Then the second method is getWeekday. It again uses the standard method isoweekdays, which returns you the weekday of the datetime object. By the definition of datetime, Monday is defined as 1, Tuesday as 2, Wednesday as 3, and so on. Then we can apply these two methods to the column date separately and build two new columns. Now let's take a look at the final result. We now have 6 columns. Besides the first 4 columns which already appear in the original data frame, we also have the column week and weekdays. And we can see how these days are characterized by the number of weeks they are in and their corresponding weekday number. Once we build these 2 columns, the data frame now contains a lot of common features, so we can use these features to build our pivot table. To do so, we call the Pandas method pivot table and pass the values, index, and columns to be the column headers we want Pandas to use. Here in this example, we choose values to be Apple, index to be the week, and columns to be the weekday. The output data frame looks very much like a calendar. With the sales of Apple aligned on the same row, we can immediately observe which weekday sells the most apples and so on. We can also see that the output pivot table is actually a data frame, where the column headers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively, and indices being 20 and 21. And when we check the type of the object pt_apple, we see that it is indeed a data frame. Notice that making a pivot table is not the end of our story. We also want to help our friend to extract some useful features from the data frame. To do so, we need to use the aggregation method again. If you're not familiar with this method, I encourage you to take a look at our chapter 10, which discusses in details how to use it with the group by object. We can parse the data frame and find the aggregated sum, maximum and minimum. We choose access equals 1 to specify that we want to find the aggregated value along the same row, that is, in the same week. Then Pandas gives us a small data frame which contains in each row the sum, max, and minimum of the sales of apples in a week. We can repeat the same process for other columns such as the orange or kiwi. It will depend on your imagination how to make full use of this data. Certainly, one thing missing here is the visualization. In the next tutorial, we will go through the steps how to build a graph from these objects. I also leave you a food for thought here. Actually, the same result can also be done by using the group by method. Do you know the procedure? Now let's exercise to check if you have learned well the material we discussed today. Your friend comes to you again with a data frame containing the data. It seems your friend is interested in stock investment. The data frame contains the price and the volume of a stock in each transaction day. Your friend wants to know the following. Can you use your Pandas skills and help your friend to find the answer? Again, feel free to pause the video so that you can try it on your own. Let's check the answer. Before we go through the solution, the first step we need to do is to convert the column date from string object to datetime object. The procedure is identical to what we have discussed in this tutorial, so I will not go into details here. After we have column date containing datetime object, let's dive in to take a look how to calculate the average daily price change in a week. We will first do a column operation to build a new column change. We use the diff method, which helps you to calculate the difference of the price with the price in the previous day. If you're not familiar with this kind of operation, please visit chapter 6 on column operation. Then we build the pivot table similar to the prescription described in previous slides, except that we choose the column change instead of price. This will generate a calendar-like object on the change of price compared to previous transaction day. After that, we use the aggregate function we have introduced in chapter 9 to find the average. Remember to set access equals 1 so that we are finding the average along the row. Also, in the aggregation function, we pass the numpy method mean because Python does not have the standard function for taking average. Then let's look at the solution for finding the weekly volume. We simply need to build another pivot table by choosing the argument values as volume. Then we can do the aggregation along each row with the sum method. Finally, let's look at the most difficult part in this chapter for finding the net cash flow. To do so, we need to build a small method to calculate the cash flow each day. Again, we need to use the apply method we have introduced in chapter 6. Given the price and volume, we return the product of these two quantities by checking if the change is positive or negative. If it is positive, we return the product directly. If it is negative, we multiply the product by -1. Then we apply this method by passing the 3 columns of data. Then we do another column operation by the method CumSum. That is the abbreviation of cumulative sum. For each row, this method finds the sum along the column from the first row to the particular row. For example, for row 10, this method sums up all the data along column cash flow from row 0 to row 10. Finally, we have finished all the exercise. I hope the exercise today can bring you more challenge and insight in how to use Pandas. So that's the end of our 10th tutorial video. And once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope to see you again in the next tutorial. We will learn how to use Pandas to do visualization. Certainly, it will be the most useful and important application we may have when we process the data. Again, practice makes perfect. I will encourage you to also read my open source ebook to do some of the related exercises to strengthen your skills. I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial today. See you.